The Red Keep stood proud against the cloudy skies of King's Landing. Inside the council chambers, a heavy silence had fallen. It was the year 111 AC, and King Viserys Targaryen's decision would shape the future of the realm forever. The lords gathered had expected division, but none anticipated the king's next words. "I will unite House Targaryen by blood and fire," Viserys declared, his voice echoing through the hall. "My daughter Rhaenyra shall wed her half-brother Prince Aegon." Murmurs rippled like a storm. Otto Hightower's mouth tightened into a grim line, while Alicent the Queen lowered her eyes, concealing the fury that boiled beneath her calm. Facade! She had pushed so hard for Aegon's claim, whispered to lords and ladies alike that her son should inherit the Iron Throne. Now, Viserys had turned her ambitions into a political marriage. Rhaenyra herself stood like a statue. She was no stranger to court games, but the idea of marrying Aegon, her own younger half-brother, a boy of just 10 name days, disgusted and angered her. Yet she understood duty. The Iron Throne was worth the price of pride. When their betrothal was announced, the court feigned joy, but underneath, knives were being sharpened. Moonlight spilled across the gardens, where Rhaenyra found herself walking alone, her sworn shield Criston Cole shadowing her steps. She had sent him away earlier, needing time to think. She heard the soft footsteps before she saw him. Prince Aegon, awkward and wide-eyed, approached her with the uncertainty of youth. I didn't want this either," he said, voice barely above a whisper. Rhaenyra looked down at him, a prince born of a different mother, yet still blood of her blood. "Neither did I, but we must play the game our father set for us." Aegon frowned. "Mother says I should be king." "So should I," Rhaenyra replied coolly. "That's why we'll marry. Together no one can deny us." For a brief moment, Aegon's eyes brightened. Perhaps in his young mind, the future seemed simpler now, but neither understood the deep currents moving beneath the surface, currents driven by ambition, jealousy, and quiet rage. Years passed swiftly. Rhaenyra and Aegon were wed in the Dragon Pit, beneath the watchful eyes of the Seven and the blazing heat of dragonfire. The match brought a tense peace. Lords bent the knee to both the prince and princess. Their union produced heirs. First a silver-haired son named Viserys, then a daughter Baela, whose fierce spirit reminded the court of the old Valyria. But peace is a fragile thing in Westeros. Otto Hightower, dismissed as hand, but never defeated, in spirit wove a web of loyalists who whispered that Rhaenyra ruled through Aegon, that the prince had become a puppet to his older wife. Alicent, scorned and bitter, fed these whispers, watching as her influence at court diminished. By the time King Viserys grew frail and bedbound, the court had fractured into quiet factions. The Greens still plotted for Aegon alone to wear the crown. The Blacks, loyal to Rhaenyra, vowed to see her crowned queen with her husband at her side, and in the shadows the maesters spoke of dragons growing restless. The realm was not at peace, it was merely waiting for war. On a cold morning, in 129 AC, King Viserys breathed his last. The news spread like wildfire through the Red Keep. Lords gathered swiftly in the throne room, where the Iron Throne loomed silent and cold. Sir Harwin Strong, now Lord Commander of the Kingsguard, stood by Rhaenyra and Aegon as they approached, the throne together. The room watched in breathless anticipation. Aegon hesitated. His mother's voice echoed in his mind. "Take the crown. Rule alone. She will never let you be king in truth." But then he looked at Rhaenyra. Her gaze was steel and fire. "No division," she whispered. "No dance of dragons. We rule as one." The Lord of Storm's End knelt first. "Long live King Aegon and Queen Rhaenyra." One by one, others followed. The realm had chosen peace, or so it seemed. The coronation was a grand affair, though the air felt heavy with false smiles and watchful eyes. The great sept of Baelor had never seen such splendor. Dragon banners flowing down marble walls, gold and black silk draped over the altar. Aegon wore the conqueror's crown, heavy black iron edged in red rubies. Rhaenyra's brow bore the slender starry crown once worn by Visenya. As the high septon anointed them, the crowd chanted, "Long may they reign!" But beyond the applause, beyond the oaths of loyalty, the seeds of dissent had already been planted. In the halls of the Red Keep, Alicent Hightower stood apart. Her children by Aegon, Daeron and Aemond had grown cold and distant toward their father, poisoned by her quiet words. "You were born to rule alone," Alicent often whispered to Aegon in the privacy of the Queen's apartments. "She uses you. She fears you'll claim your rightful place." Aegon listened but did not answer. He had learned to keep his thoughts close, yet the weight of those words gnawed at him. Every council meeting where Rhaenyra took charge, every decision where her voice overruled his, was he a king or merely her consort? The lords who had once rallied behind the Greens began to gather in secret, not openly defiant, but cautious. Houses, Hightower, Lannister, and even some minor Riverland lords whispered of Aegon's birthright and the unnatural rule of a woman. Meanwhile, across Blackwater Bay, Prince Daemon Targaryen kept his eyes sharp upon the happenings in King's Landing. He had always mistrusted this match between Rhaenyra and Aegon. His loyalty to his niece was unwavering, but the young king's mind, weak and easily swayed, made him a threat. Daemon had married Laena Velaryon and, after her death, taken Rhaenyra's hand years ago. That bond had been broken to serve the king's will, yet Daemon's protectiveness had never dimmed. He flew to Dragonstone one evening aboard Caraxes, landing upon the dark stone court where Rhaenyra often retreated for counsel. "You think the Greens will stay loyal now that they share the throne?" he asked her as they walked the cliffs overlooking the sea. "They have no choice," Rhaenyra replied, though her tone lacked conviction. Daemon shook his head. "You've united the Dragon Lords by marriage, but not their hearts. Your enemies wear smiles and sharpen daggers behind closed doors." Rhaenyra sighed. "And what would you have me do? Name you hand? Wage war against my own husband's kin?" "I would have you remember that dragons do not beg for peace," Daemon said, his eyes narrowing. "They demand it." Months passed, and a chill crept into the Red Keep. What began as quiet grumblings soon turned to plots. One night, young Prince Viserys, the child of Rhaenyra and Aegon, was nearly killed. His nursemaid found a rat-catcher lurking in his chambers with a blade. Hidden beneath his rags, the assassin was caught and flayed before he could name who sent him. The Greens denied involvement. Alicent swore upon the Seven that she had no knowledge of the attempt. But Rhaenyra knew better. The attack wasn't just an attempt on her son's life. It was a message. "You must act," Daemon pressed when he heard the news. "Strike before they strike again." But Rhaenyra hesitated. To move against the Greens would be to shatter the fragile peace she had spent years building. She wanted to believe that Aegon would stand beside her, that together they could root out the treachery without bloodshed. That night, she went to Aegon's chambers. He was seated by the window, looking out over the city he ruled in name but barely controlled. When she told him of the assassin, he paled. "I will order an inquiry," he said. "We will find the traitors." Rhaenyra placed a hand on his shoulder. "No inquiries, no councils. We must move swiftly. I need to know where your loyalties truly lie, Aegon. Are you my husband and my king, or are you your mother's pawn?" For a long moment, Aegon was silent. Then, slowly, he nodded. "I will stand with you." But in the shadows, someone was listening. Sir Criston Cole, now the Lord Commander of Aegon's personal guard, slipped away before the conversation ended. He had once loved Rhaenyra long ago. That love had turned to hate, and now it would become betrayal. The dance of the dragons had been avoided by marriage, but in truth it had only been delayed, and the dragons were waking. The night was restless. Storm clouds gathered over King's Landing, and the city seemed to sense what was coming. Common folk whispered of omens, deformed calves born in the markets, a sceptre ablaze without cause, and shadows flying over the moon that no one dared name aloud. In the Red Keep, Rhaenyra summoned her most trusted allies to her private solar. Daemon stood at her side, his arms crossed, the glimmer of Carax's saddle still clinging to his riding leathers. Lord Corlys Velaryon, the sea snake, leaned heavily on his cane. Even aged, his mind was sharp as ever. "There will be no inquiry," Rhaenyra began, her face set in stone. "The assassin's blade was meant to destroy the future of House Targaryen, we must respond." Corlys nodded. "The sea has eyes. Word from the Stepstones confirms that High Tower ships have begun hiring cell sails. If they are preparing fleets, war is certain." Daemon smirked. "Then let it come. We have dragons. They have wood and iron." But it was not war Rhaenyra wanted. Not yet. Not while the realm still had a chance to be held together. "We will not be the first to draw blood," she said, silencing Daemon's eagerness. "We will expose the traitors and force their hand. I want arrests, quiet, precise." Sir Harwin Strong bowed. "It will be done, my queen." Aegon entered moments later, flanked by two guards who seemed more jailers than protectors. His face was pale, lips dry. "I have sent letters to Old Town, ordering my grandfather to appear at court." Rhaenyra arched a brow. "And do you think he will obey?" Aegon swallowed hard. "He must." Daemon chuckled darkly. "Otto Hightower has never must do anything. He will come with swords, not surrender." But Rhaenyra softened, placing a hand on her husband's cheek. "You've done what you can, Aegon. Let us handle what comes next." Far to the south, in the green halls of Old Town, Otto Hightower read the summons and let the letter burn too, ash in his hearth. "Fools," he muttered, "the girl has led him by the nose from the first." Alicent stood at the window, her back stiff, fingers twisting the hem of her green gown. "Will you answer the summons?" "No." Otto's eyes glittered with cold calculation. "We answer with steel. The reach is ready. The banners of Old Town, House Redwine and House Hightower will march, and Lord Jason Lannister sends word. Casterly. Rock will join us once we move." Alicent nodded, though the weight of her son's rebellion settled heavy on her heart. He was supposed to be king alone. Now he is her shield. Otto sneered. Not for long. Back in the capital, the first of Rhaenyra's moves unfolded. Lord Jasper Wilde, Master of Laws, presented names before the small council. Knights and lesser lords whose loyalty to the Greens had been long suspected. One by one, arrests were made. Quietly at first, no blood, no public displays, yet every man taken down was a thread pulled from the Greens' fragile web. But Sir Criston Cole was not idle. As the arrests mounted, Criston slipped away under cover of night. His destination, the chambers of Prince Aemond. Aemond had grown into a cold and cunning man, tall, lean, with a sapphire in place of his missing eye. He was the true blade of the Greens, sharper than Aegon had ever been. "They are moving against us," Criston reported. "Soon they'll reach you, my prince." Aemond's smile was thin as a knife's edge. "Then it's time we cut first." Within hours, ravens flew from the rookery to the Hightower fleet. Word spread among the discontented lords. The time for patience had ended. The time for fire had come. At dawn, black sails were spotted off Driftmark. The Velaryon fleet moved to intercept, but in the skies above dark shapes already stirred. Vhagar, the ancient dragon once ridden by Visenya herself, now carried Aemond. And he was not flying alone. Silverwing, Sea Smoke, Vermithor, dragons loyal to the Greens had been called. The first flames of war had been lit before a sword had even been drawn on land. Daemon and Rhaenyra stood upon the battlements of Dragonstone, watching the gathering storm. "So it begins," Daemon whispered. "No," Rhaenyra replied. "It begins when I say it begins." But even a queen could not stop what had already been set in motion. The bells of King's Landing rang out. At sunrise, not in celebration, but as a warning. Smoke curled on the horizon. Driftmark was under siege. Ravens brought grim tidings. A portion of the Valyrian fleet had been scattered, ships burning in Blackwater Bay. Lord Corlys had survived, but barely, wounded and furious. Inside the Red Keep, Rhaenyra convened her loyal lords and captains. The small council table had become a war council. "They struck first," Lord Corlys rasped, his face pale beneath the silver of his beard. "Aemond rides Vhagar. He burned ships, flying my banners. This is no longer a conspiracy, it is war." Daemon's eyes flashed. "Then we unleash the dragons." Aegon sat at the head of the table, but he seemed smaller than the oak chair that once held his father. His hand trembled slightly as he lifted his goblet. "If we bring dragons against dragons, the city will burn, as it did at Harrenhal, as it did in old Valyria." "This city has already burned," Daemon growled. "You just refuse to see it." Rhaenyra silenced them with a glance. "We will not scorch the realm for pride." "Not yet." She pointed to the map laid out across the table. "We will gather our banners. Stannis Baratheon remains loyal to the crown, as do the Riverlands and the North. If we strike at Old Town and force a surrender before their dragons can regroup, we might avoid a full dance." The lords nodded. Plans were drawn, ravens sent, dragons readied. But the court was restless, and the common folk uneasy. They remembered Mingor the Cruel. They remembered the wrath of dragons. That night, Aegon came to Rhaenyra's chambers. He wore no crown, no cloak of office, only the plain black of a son seeking counsel. "I fear this will tear us apart," he admitted, voice low. "Even if we win, what will be left?" Rhaenyra stood by the window, watching the torches below flicker like dying stars. "Aegon, this was always the cost. The day our father named me his heir, the day we married to stop the bloodshed, it only delayed the inevitable. The Greens will not yield." Aegon's shoulders sagged. "I see it now. Mother will never stop. And Aemond, he was born for war. You were not." Rhaenyra touched his cheek. "That is not weakness. It is wisdom." But even wisdom could not stop what was coming. At dawn, Sir Harwin Strong brought dire news. "The High Towers have marched. 10,000 men ride north from Old Town. They will reach King's Landing within a fortnight." "And the dragons?" Rhaenyra asked. "Vhagar has flown to join them. Silverwing and Vermithor remain near Bitterbridge, awaiting the call." Rhaenyra closed her eyes. "They mean to lay siege." Daemon smiled coldly. "Let them. Their armies will choke the fields. Their dragons will meet ours in the sky. And when the day ends, the Riverlands and the Reach will be a grave." Aegon looked from Daemon to Rhaenyra, horror growing in his gaze. "You would burn the fields we rule?" "I would burn the traitors who threaten my children," Rhaenyra snapped. For a moment the room held its breath. "I'll fight," Aegon whispered. "I'll fly Sunfire into battle if I must." "No." Rhaenyra's voice softened. "You will remain in the capital, as king. You are the symbol that holds our loyalists together. If you fall, the realm falls with you." Daemon gave a curt nod. "Leave the skies to those prepared for what must be done." By week's end, the banners of the north had begun their march. Lord Cregan Stark answered Rhaenyra's call, his direwolf banners flying high. The Riverlands rallied behind the Black Queen. Even some minor houses of the Reach turned against the Hightowers, disgusted by Oldtown's thirst for power. But it would take time for those forces to gather. And time was running out. In the dead of night, a rider cloaked in green slipped through the streets of King's Landing, avoiding the gold cloaks. He made his way to a small sept tucked between the blacksmith's ward and the cobbler's square. Inside, Alicent Hightower waited. "The city wavers," the rider reported. "There are still many loyal to your cause, my queen. Enough to open the gates when the Hightower host arrives." Alicent's eyes shone with a fanatic's light. "Good. When the gates fall, Rhaenyra and Daemon will die. Aegon will be spared. My son will finally be free." The rider hesitated, "And the small folk? There will be blood." "There has always been blood," Alicent said coldly. "Better theirs than ours." On Dragonstone, Rhaenyra stood atop the highest tower, watching Syrax's golden wings stretch in the moonlight. Daemon approached, Caraxes snarling low behind him. "They are coming," he said simply. "I know." "Then it's time." She nodded. "We dance at dawn." Dawn broke red as blood over Blackwater Bay. The rising sun cast a crimson glow across the waves, making the ships of the approaching Hightower fleet look like shadows of doom. Atop the walls of King's Landing, soldiers gathered in tight formations, the banners of the Crown and the loyal Riverlands fluttering in the stiff breeze. In the distance, dust rose in great plumes. The Hightower host had arrived sooner than expected. 10,000 men stretched across the fields beyond the city. There, armor glinting like a steel tide, green banners snapped in the wind. And above them, Vhagar circled, a dark leviathan blotting out the morning light. Aegon stood on the walls, flanked by Sir Harwin Strong and Lord Corlys. His face was pale but resolute. "She's here," he whispered. Harwin nodded grimly. "And she brings death." Rhaenyra and Daemon arrived soon after, flying in from Dragonstone with Syrax and Caraxes. Behind them soared their loyal dragon riders, Rhaenyra upon Morning, Joffrey Valerian on Tyraxes, and several others sworn to the Black cause. As the dragons approached, a fearful murmur rippled through the soldiers on both sides. Aemond rode out from the enemy lines, Vhagar looming behind him like a mountain with wings. "The time has come," Daemon growled. "Shall we?" "No." Rhaenyra's eyes narrowed. "Not yet." She guided Syrax to land near the city's walls. Caraxes followed, settling like a crimson serpent. Rhaenyra addressed her captains and bannermen. "We will not give them the battle they want. Not on open fields where they have the numbers. We hold the walls. We protect the people. If the Greens wish to break us, they must do so at great cost." Daemon scowled but said nothing. He knew war too well to argue with her strategy. As the siege began, the Greens made their move. Alicent's agents within the city, Goldcloaks, minor knights, even septons, rose in rebellion. Fires spread in Flea Bottom. Gatekeepers were bribed or slain. At the Lion Gate, traitors tried to open the way for the Hightower army. But the Blacks were ready. Sir Harwin Strong led loyal Goldcloaks and Riverlords in a swift, brutal purge. Treasonous guards were cut down. Rebels who surrendered were hanged in the square. Aegon, though torn, ordered it himself. "No mercy," he declared, "not for those who would murder my children and destroy my realm." By nightfall, the Hightower host launched their first assault. Siege towers rumbled forward. Ladders rose against the walls. Arrows and rocks filled the sky, but Rhaenyra's forces held firm. Lord Cregan Stark had arrived with northern troops days earlier than expected. His men fought like wolves, howling as they drove back the attackers. Above, dragons roared. Syrax and Caraxes unleashed fire upon the siege towers, turning wood and flesh alike into ash. Morning and Tyraxes strafed the flanks of the Hightower army, burning supply lines and scattering cavalry. Yet Vhagar remained aloft, silent and terrible, watching. Aemond did not strike that day. He was waiting. In the darkness of the second night, Alicent sent a final message to her son. Take the crown, kill the woman, end this. Aemond didn't reply. He didn't need to. His mind was already made up. As the moon rose, he mounted Vhagar and took to the skies. Rhaenyra sensed it before she saw him. A chill passed through her bones. As Syrax stirred beneath her feet, Aemond was coming. Daemon was already in the saddle. Caraxes bellowed, wings unfolding. Stay by the city, Rhaenyra commanded. Defend the walls. But Daemon shook his head, face hard as the steel. He carried. This ends tonight. Before she could stop him, Caraxes launched into the night, a crimson blaze streaking toward the monstrous shape of Vhagar. Aemond! Daemon roared across the skies. Face me! Aemond's laughter carried on the wind. I've waited for this, uncle. Vhagar surged forward, her maw glowing with the threat of dragonfire. The dance of dragons, the true dance, had begun. Far below, Aegon stood on the battlements, watching his brother and uncle climb into the stars. He felt Rhaenyra step beside him. This will decide it, he said quietly. Rhaenyra nodded. Yes, for all of us. As the first clash of dragon against dragon shook the night sky, the realm held its breath. The sky burned like a forge. Caraxes struck first, his long serpentine body weaving through the air with terrifying speed. He raked, his claws across Vhagar's ancient scales, drawing blood as dark as midnight. The older dragon shrieked in rage, but did not falter. Her massive wings beat the air like thunder, forcing Caraxes back. Daemon leaned low in his saddle, gripping the pommel hard. Come then, Aemond. Let's finish this. Aemond's sapphire. Her gleamed beneath the moonlight. I will burn you from the sky, uncle. With a roar, Vhagar twisted and lunged, her jaws snapping toward Caraxes. But Daemon anticipated the move. He pulled sharply, sending Caraxes into a steep dive. The older dragon's teeth closed on empty air. Then Caraxes reversed, his tail whipping upward to smash into Vhagar's exposed underside. The blow shook both dragons, but Vhagar's sheer size gave her the advantage. She recovered quickly, wings surging as she climbed higher. The battle raged above the bay, fire and blood raining down on the dark waters below. Ships from both fleets burned, forgotten, in the chaos of dragonfire. From the city walls, thousands watched in awe and terror. The sky itself seemed at war. Rhaenyra stood with Aegon and her sworn guards, eyes fixed on the duel above. Daemon cannot win alone, she whispered. Aegon turned to her. Then we ride together. Before she could argue, he had already called for Sunfire. Sunfire was a young dragon still, beautiful with golden scales, but he had not yet tasted true battle. Aegon climbed into the saddle as Rhaenyra approached Syrax. Our dragons will not be enough, Rhaenyra warned. If Vhagar kills Caraxes, she will burn the city. Then we make sure she does not. Husband and wife, king and queen, and took to the skies. Syrax rose beside Sunfire, her wings beating the cold night air. Together they soared toward the battle raging above the bay. Daemon saw them coming and felt both relief and dread. This was not how he had wanted it. He had intended to face Aemond alone, to settle the blood feud without risking Rhaenyra or the young king. But fate had other plans. As Syrax and Sunfire joined the fray, Vhagar let out a bellow of fury. She turned from Caraxes, focusing now on the new challengers. Aemond's voice rang out, "So the cowards come together? Then you'll die together." Vhagar unleashed a torrent of dragonfire. Sunfire darted aside, flames licking harmlessly past. Syrax answered with her own fire, bathing Vhagar's left wing in searing heat. For the first time, the ancient dragon faltered. Caraxes seized the opening. He lunged, his jaws clamping down on Vhagar's exposed wing joint. Bone cracked beneath his teeth. Vhagar roared in agony, twisting violently. She slammed her massive body into Caraxes, breaking his grip. The two dragons locked in a deadly spiral, claws tearing, teeth snapping. Above them, Syrax and Sunfire circled, striking when they could, but wary of Vhagar's terrible reach. On the ground, the Hightower forces tried to rally. Lord Ormond Hightower called his banners forward, pressing another assault on the city gates. But the defenders held firm. Northern spears and Riverland swords repelled every push. Lord Cregan Stark led a sortie that broke the enemy's left flank, driving them back in bloody retreat. Inside the city, the last of Alicent's conspirators were rooted out and slain. Even as the dragons battled above, the Green's cause began to unravel below. Back in the sky, the fight reached its climax. Vhagar, though wounded, remained the mightiest dragon alive. She lashed out, her tail striking Sunfire and sending the young dragons spiraling away. Aegon struggled to regain control, barely keeping his mount from crashing into the bay. Syrax dove to protect them, biting at Vhagar's exposed throat, but it was Daemon who made the final move. As Caraxes latched onto Vhagar's side, Daemon drew Dark Sister, his Valyrian steel blade. He urged Caraxes closer, too close for safety. With a leap few men would dare, Daemon vaulted from his saddle onto Vhagar's back. Aemon turned, shock on his face as Daemon landed before him. "For House Targaryen!" Daemon roared. Before Aemon could react, Daemon drove Dark Sister through his nephew's chest. Aemon's cry of rage and disbelief echoed across the sky as he toppled from his saddle, vanishing into the night. Without her rider's command, Vhagar shrieked and bucked wildly. Caraxes held on with grim determination, pulling the massive dragon into a death spiral. Syrax tried to intervene, but Rhaenyra pulled back. "No!" she shouted. "It's done!" The two great beasts plummeted, locked together, falling from the sky like a comet. The waters of Blackwater Bay exploded as they struck. Silence followed. A terrible, heavy silence. On the walls, Aegon landed Sunfire shakily. Rhaenyra brought Syrax down beside him. They looked to the bay, where the waves had already begun to swallow the wreckage. Daemon, Aemond, Caraxes, Vhagar, all gone. "Victory," Aegon whispered, though his eyes were wet. "Victory," Rhaenyra agreed, but her heart felt heavier than ever. Far across the battlefield, the Hightower host saw the dragons fall. Leaderless and terrified, they broke and fled. Lord Ormond was slain by northern swords. The remnants of the Green Army scattered into the night. The dance had ended, but at what cost? The battlefield was quiet now. Only the crows remained, black wings circling overhead, waiting to feast. The Hightower host had crumbled like rotted timber. Lord Ormond's head was already mounted on a pike outside the Lion Gate. The Reach lords who survived threw down their banners, begging for mercy. Some were granted it, most were not. But the price of victory weighed heavily upon the city. Daemon was gone, Caraxes too. The greatest of the Green's dragons, Vhagar, had fallen into the depths of Blackwater Bay. There would be no recovering their bodies. The tide had claimed them. Rhaenyra stood upon the ramparts, looking out over the quiet water. The salt wind carried the scent of ash and blood. Aegon stood beside her, silent. His armor was dented, his golden cloak torn. Sunfire rested in the fields beyond the walls, wounded but alive. "They sing of victory," Aegon said softly, "but it feels like loss." "It is both," Rhaenyra replied. "That is what war truly is." She placed a hand on his arm. For once, he did not flinch or pull away. They had bled together. That bond was stronger than any crown. The lords gathered in the great hall 3 days later, river lords, Northmen, Valyrian captains, and the few remaining Reach bannermen loyal to the Blacks. Rhaenyra entered first, clad in black and red. Her silver-gold hair was unbound, flowing like the banners overhead. Aegon followed, wearing the conqueror's crown. Lord Cregan Stark was the first to kneel. The North remembers. The realm stands. United. One by one, the lords pledged their swords and their loyalty. The realm had been shattered by ambition, but it would be reforged by fire. When the last lord had sworn, Rhaenyra turned to Aegon. "It is time." Aegon nodded. Together they approached the Iron Throne. The great chair of twisted swords and steel loomed like a beast waiting to devour them. Aegon paused, as if hesitating. "I never wanted this." "Nor did I," Rhaenyra whispered, "but we were born to it." She helped him ascend first. Aegon sat upon the Iron Throne, for the first time, not as a king divided from his queen, but as a ruler united in purpose. Rhaenyra stood at his side. "The war is done," Aegon proclaimed. "The treasonous lines of the Greens are broken. Those who defied the crown are dead or scattered." He paused, voice steady. "But there will be no purge, no more kinslaying. This realm will heal, or it will fall forever." Some lords looked uncertain. They had expected blood, revenge. But the king's word was law. Rhaenyra added, "Let it be known, this is not the rule of fire alone. It is the rule of wisdom." Yet not all agreed. Far in the Reach, remnants of the Greens gathered. Alicent Hightower had vanished from King's Landing during the siege. Some said she had fled to Old Town. Others whispered darker tales, that she sought allies across the sea. Alicent's surviving sons, Daeron and the maimed Aemon's bastard sons, were smuggled away by loyalists. Though beaten, the Greens were not entirely broken. The seeds of rebellion had been planted too deeply. They would take generations to wither. In the months that followed, the realm began to mend. The Riverlands rebuilt their shattered villages. The Reach swore cautious fealty once more. Even Old Town, under a new and more cautious Hightower lord, offered peace. But the scars remained. Rhaenyra bore them not just in her soul, but in the way the small folk looked at her, a mix of fear and awe. She was the queen who had married her brother to save the realm, the mother who had lost sons to treachery, the rider of Syrax, whose flames had burned traitors and saved the innocent alike. Aegon ruled beside her, wiser now. He delegated power, listened to his counsel, and learned from Rhaenyra's strength. But the shadows of the dance never fully left them. One evening, as dusk painted the sky in shades of purple and gold, Rhaenyra and Aegon stood atop Maegor's holdfast. "Do you regret it?" Aegon asked quietly. "All of it," Rhaenyra answered. "But I would do it again." He nodded. "So would I." They watched the dragons circle in the distance, Syrax and Sunfire, now bonded by battle as their riders were bonded by loss. "The realm is ours," Aegon said, "but for how long?" "As long as we can hold it together," Rhaenyra replied, "and no longer." The dance had ended, but the song of fire and blood would never truly stop. Spring came early the following year, but it brought no sense of renewal. King's Landing had begun to heal, its burned districts repaired, the ships in Blackwater Bay replaced, and the markets once again crowded with merchants and small folk. Yet beneath the surface, the city carried a wound that time could not erase. The people called it the Quiet Reign. King Aegon and Queen Rhaenyra ruled not with the splendor of their predecessors, but with caution and cold wisdom. The Iron Thrones. Sharp edges had claimed too much blood for vanity or grandeur. The court shifted. Gone were the factions of green and black. Those who remained had bent the knee or faced exile. Lord Cregan Stark returned to the north after ensuring the king's justice had been served. Lord Corlys Velaryon retired to Driftmark, weary of war, though his loyalty never wavered. But not all enemies had vanished. From across the narrow sea, whispers arrived like cold winds. Alicent Hightower had survived. She had fled to Pentos, gathering what allies she could. Bitter reachmen, ambitious exiles, and sell-sail captains who saw opportunity in a weakened Westeros. With her were Dairon, the last legitimate Green Prince, and several young dragon seeds, bastards with the blood of old Valyria, seeking to claim the lost legacy of their kin. Though the dance had ended, the game had not. In the Red Keep, Rhaenyra met with her spy master, a quiet woman known only as the Spider. "The Triarchy courts Alicent," the Spider warned. "They despise your father's bloodline and may use the Hightowers to destabilize the realm." "Let them come," Rhaenyra said, but her voice lacked the fire of younger days. "I am not the girl they remember." "No," the Spider agreed. "You are much more dangerous now." Aegon had changed too. Where once he had resented the crown, he now embraced it, but not for power, for survival, for his children. Their eldest, Viserys, had begun to show the makings of a strong heir. His sister Baela trained daily with her sword, and with Syrax's daughter, Moondancer. Even young Maela, their youngest, spent his days shadowing Lord Harwin Strong, learning the arts of war and governance alike. The Targaryen line endured, but the fear remained that the curse of fire and blood would one day consume the next generation, as it had consumed so many before. On the 5th anniversary of their shared reign, a great feast was held. Lords from across Westeros gathered to pay homage, though many bore the guarded look of men waiting for the next war to erupt. Aegon raised his goblet, his voice steady. "Today, we do not celebrate conquest. We celebrate survival. This is what it means to rule, not victory, but endurance." The hall cheered, though some voices were more forced than others. Later, that night, Rhaenyra stood alone on the balcony overlooking Blackwater Bay. Syrax rested on the cliffs beyond, her golden wings folding slowly in the moonlight. Caraxes and Vhagar lay beneath the waves somewhere far below, silent witnesses to a war that had changed the world. Aegon approached quietly. "You think they'll ever forget?" he asked. "The realm?" "No," she replied. "They'll remember. The blood and the fire, the dragons and the war. They'll sing songs that make us seem monsters or heroes, but they'll forget the quiet moments, the sacrifices we made to keep this realm from tearing itself apart completely." He nodded, slipping his hand into hers. "I fear what comes next." "So do I," Rhaenyra admitted. "But we will face it together. That's what our marriage was always meant to be. Not just a political bond, a shield." Aegon squeezed her hand. "No more dance. Not for our children." "No more dance," she agreed. But both knew it was a promise they could not guarantee. Far across the sea, in a dark hall of Pentos, Alicent Hightower watched a boy barely out of childhood climb into the saddle of a young dragon with green-tinged scales. "Soon," she whispered, "soon, the fire will rise again." The dance had ended, but the storm would never truly pass, for in the House of the Dragon, the price of power was always paid in fire and blood.